Okay, great.
I should have put
Get a little closer as well. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today is a great day. A day in which Cincinnati sets itself apart once again from its peers. In 2001, a tragedy occurred. However, the city and its partners, several of whom are here today, made a conscious decision to pursue reconciliation and remediation in their pursuit of improved police-community relations. Many in our community working with the police department have made great strides over the past 16 years. Cincinnati continues to serve as a best-in-class example of how this work must be pursued. We have a robust and high-performing Citizens Complaint Authority. Through the Urban League, we have the Partnering Center, which does a phenomenal job of spreading the gospel of the Sarah model, helping communities to empower themselves through conflict resolution and problem solving. We have a reinvigorated Managers Advisory Group, which provides policy and problem-solving advisory support to the city manager. And we have our police department, a department that has transformed itself over the past 16 years. CPD has become a national leader in police community relations and an innovator in problem-solving and community engagement. Today we are here to announce what I believe to be a first of its kind. As if the current collaborative agreement was not monumental enough, we as a city have decided to pursue a refresh of that agreement. Cincinnati is not afraid to look at itself and self-reflect. Cincinnati is always looking for ways and opportunities to improve. This is yet another example of the city's commitment to continuous improvement. We have several speakers this afternoon. They will provide background, context, perspective, and an overview of the scope and the timelines associated with this refresh. So let's get started. First, we will have our Mayor, John Cranley. He will be followed by Judge Susan DeLotte.
Thank you very much. And I agree that this is historic. The city, 16 years ago, agreed to participate in the mediation. I'll get into those details in a minute, on a 5-4 vote, which led to the collaborative agreement. It expired, I think, in 2009, roughly. And we have attempted and believe that we have continued the spirit of the collaborative ever since. As we know, and I don't agree with this, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has recently decided to pull out of a lot of these agreements in many cities. I think that's a mistake for those cities. I've had the opportunity to speak with mayors around the country, and I advise them to try to follow a similar path of getting engaged with a mediation collaborative with Justice Department. Well, we were lucky enough to have Justice Department that was engaged, and we went through this process. And like anything, it had some fits and starts, but we're very proud of the fact that Saul Green, who you're going to hear from in a minute, felt that we made real progress. We're very proud of the fact that a couple of years ago, Attorney General Loretta Lynch came here and said we were the role model for police community relations in the country. But none of that suggests that there isn't more to do. There's always more to do. Continuous improvement is a never-ending process. And about a year ago, or maybe less than that, but within the last year, as the country has dealt with more and more police shootings that have raised a lot of concerns about injustice, and that police officers have been gunned down in places like Dallas and Baton Rouge, there's a real sense that there are new issues bubbling up that we may not have thought of 10 years ago or 15 years ago. The most obvious being that body cameras didn't even exist when we did the collaborative in 2002. And so it seems progressive and smart not to let the need to update our collaborative come because of crisis, which candidly is what happened the last time, but because we're trying to stay ahead and stay fresh. Now let me just say, and I think it's an amazing story of what has happened. As most of you know, I was a member of City Council in 2001 and through the process of mediating and negotiating collaborative in 2002. In the summer of 2001, I think the most historic vote of city council in the last probably 50 years, 5-4 vote was decided to mediate the lawsuits that the Black United Front and the ACLU had brought against the city, rather than litigate. It's extremely controversial decision and vote. It was 5-4. 1 year later, when we had the collaborative agreement back in front of council, and the Attorney General at the time, John Ashcroft, was there to sign the agreement, it was a unanimous vote to accept. But the decision to go down the process of mediation was a 5-4 vote. I'm very proud that my name was on the 5 in favor of going down that road. It's also the case that I remember very clearly being in Judge Shalot's courtroom, or actually in her chambers, late into the evening on several nights as we finished up the deal. And she was an amazing leader of forcing us to make compromise and changes to get to a win-win solution. And I remember I was sitting there with Alicia Reese and David Pepper, who were council members at the time. And there were other parties, of course, including Iris Rowley, David Lynch III, and of course their attorney Scott Greenwood, I think it was, and Al Gerstein and others, and Ken Lawson. And of course the FOP was there. And I can tell you that the three of us, you know, we didn't get along with, at the time, with the parties. We didn't get along with the plaintiffs. We weren't really getting along with the FOP. And I'm pretty confident that they didn't like us very much either. It was tough, it was tense. But with Judge Shalot's help, we got through it and forged a historic agreement that has become a role model for the country. I'm proud to say a couple things. That over the years, I became very good personal friends with David Lynch III. Over the years, I became very good friends with Keith Fangman, who was the head of the FOP. And amazingly, over time, the people that were at each other's throats became bonded through this process, and our city became more harmonious. I even also became friends with Ken Lawson, who has been a big supporter of the Innocence Project that I later started. But anyway, what I find the most amazing about all of this is that I remember at the time having a conversation with a police officer who said the problem with the city is that they're handcuffing the police and they need to get out of our way, and the politicians and the Justice Department should go home. 14 years later, I'm back as mayor, and I'm talking to the same police officer. And somebody makes the suggestion that we should just go on a bunch of sweep arrests. And that same police officer said, no, we should not do that. It's not community-oriented policing. That is not the way to build community trust. That is not the way to have good, peaceful relationships in this community. Obviously, every new officer over the last 15 years has been trained under the changes. But in a testament of human capacity to change, the officers that pre-existed before the collaborative have also embraced the cultural change and have embraced the fact that we are the role model for the country. And so when I called up Dan Hills from the FOP and asked him to serve on a group for this, and whether the FOP would participate in this, the answer was immediate, yes. That is not the case in most police departments around the country. And I'm proud that we are in a city that is so progressive and willing to open ourselves back up and ask some tough questions. And lastly, let me say that in addition to me making the call to update the collaborative because of historic national events as well as events happening in this community that we're making, like the Tenzing case, but affecting us, my other immediate thought was the best way to have integrity and credibility to an update is to bring in Saul Green, who has the amazing integrity and credibility, having been here, have been not afraid to say when things were not going well, and also not afraid to say when things are getting better. So it is very exciting to me that we can bring him back and be part of this effort. Let me just end by thanking Pastor Tate, Dan Hills, Paula Bugs-Muth, Kim Neal, Reverend Lynch, Dwight Patton, and of course, the other speakers that we'll hear from shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up, we'll hear from Iris Rowley, who will give some comments representing the Black United. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. Judge.
We do this all the time.
Please, please.
Iris and I are twin separated. We just don't look it. First of all, I want to thank everybody for asking me to speak today, because it's great to be with so many old friends and colleagues. I want to talk just a little bit about what countless citizens, police and city officials, civil rights groups, Sal Green, our wonderful court-appointed monitor, and dedicated counsel and parties, the United States Department of Justice and the judiciary, accomplished in 2001 and 2002. As the mayor mentioned, we had civil unrest back in 2001. And that was not really anything new for the city. It just made the city recognize that they had been sweeping problems under the table for a long time. Serendipitously, the court got involved because there were close to a dozen lawsuits that had been filed in federal court alleging racial profiling by the Cincinnati police. I realized that these related suits presented an opportunity to address the broader issues threatening, and the parties agreed to try negotiations. Never till today, Mayor, did I realize it was on a 5-4 vote. I had no idea it was that precipitous. I met with counsel, and the parties began the negotiations, and I must say that I think during the negotiations, the people who participated in the process were at their best. Everybody really tried hard, and the key to the negotiations, as it is to everything that we do, was just to never give up and not let the parties give up, because the alternative in my case was litigation, and I knew that wasn't going to be the best solution. It took us an entire year to negotiate the agreement, and I remember stamping it in. I kept the parties in my courtroom until midnight every night trying to negotiate. I finally stamped it in at 2:04 a.m. on April the 12th, 2002. Then we waited, we held our breath while everybody voted for it, and as the mayor said, City Council voted for it, the FOP voted for it, and I want to mention one person from the FOP. Their counsel at the time, Don Hardy, was the statesman of the whole group. He was enormously helpful, and I'll never forget him for doing that. I just want to close by saying it was my responsibility, honor, and privilege as federal judge to preside over those negotiations in both agreements and the 6-year enforcement period that followed that ended in August of 2008. So just one question, what made these agreements successful? Leadership by many different people, determination, commitment, and decision-making. I believe that reviving and reinvigorating the collaborative will only help this city remain the model that it's become. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Surratt. We are certainly blessed to have you as a partner and a friend. At this time, we will have Iris Rowley, who represents the Black United Front, who will offer some perspective. She will be followed by Chief Elliott Isaac, who will also provide perspective.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And thank you for, since your time here, hearing me beat you to death about the collaborative agreement and all of its important parts and parcels. So I appreciate the dedication and the work that you put into this. Even though I wasn't in the room, and Al was in the room to help negotiate this particular deal. I also want to thank the Black United Front. It is certainly overdue, not just for members of the Black United Front to thank the Black United Front, but the city of Cincinnati. It was a courageous group of African Americans activists, not just activists, but taxpayers who decided enough was enough, and we were going to focus and do something about it. And not just focus and do something about it, but be able to really sit down and craft out what Black folk have been talking about in the city of Cincinnati. And that was the way it was being put. So I'm going to read the statement that we crafted. And we are extremely proud of our work. We're extremely proud to have had a judge, a federal judge like Judge Susan DeLotte, who had only been on the bench for 4 years.